Everyone has a place they once called home, but not everyone is welcome back. I thought I had died in this small town, killed by rumors, betrayal, and a so-called best friend. 10 years later, I returned, with a flower shop in hand and a heart that had learned how to break without shattering. 10 years ago, I was the girl everyone in Willow Creek whispered about, not because I was extraordinary, but because I became the centerpiece of a lie wrapped in honey and poison. I once stood on stage at the spring festival, a crown of lavender on my head, smiling like the world belonged to me. I didn't know that behind that smile, the person I trusted most, Camilla, was scribbling the stories that would tear me down. They said I was pregnant with a teacher's child. They said I stole someone else's scholarship. They said I was that kind of girl, the kind people pretend to pity, but love to ruin. The whispers in the school hallway didn't stab me all at once. No, each one was a small, deliberate wound. And I stayed silent because how do you defend yourself from things you didn't do? We left town quietly. I still remember our last night, my parents too tired to fight, and me staring out the back window of our car, catching a glimpse of Camilla watching us from her bedroom window. There was no guilt in her eyes, only victory. Today, I came back not as the broken girl they ran out of town. I'm the owner of a modest flower shop, Second Bloom, tucked between a bakery and a vintage bookstore on Main Street. My little shop breathes the kind of beauty that whispers, not screams. I chose flowers not because they're beautiful, but because they know what it means to die and come back. Flowers don't fear withering. They know they will bloom again when the time is right. The scent of peonies filled the air. I stood in the center of my shop, arranging wildflowers into a vase with hands that had once trembled in this very town. Now, they moved with the calm of someone who had nothing left to prove, only something to protect. It had been 10 years since I'd last heard the creak of these wooden floors or smelled the earthy sweetness of fresh-cut lilies. And now, here, I was open for business, with a chalkboard sign outside that read, "Second Bloom, a flower for every scar." I didn't expect much on the first day. Small towns are slow to warm up, and even slower to forget, but at precisely 9:07 a.m., the bell above the door jingled. My heart paused. She stepped inside like it was a memory. Soft curls, pressed linen blouse, wedding ring glinting. Mrs. Hartley, my former high school English teacher. The only one who had ever believed in me, and the only one who hadn't spoken a word when the rumors destroyed me. I wiped my hands on my apron and smiled. "Good morning." She blinked, looked me up and down. "Lila?" "Yes," I said, tone light. "I guess some flowers do come back." She stepped forward slowly, the bouquet of dahlias behind me, catching her eye. Her lips parted to speak, but no words came. Just silence, heavy, uncertain. "A decade too late." I saw the sign," she finally whispered. "I wasn't sure if it was really you." I nodded. "It is, in the flesh, and hopefully better. Rooted this time." She looked down, then at the flowers. "You always loved dahlias. You wrote that poem about them." I remembered. And I remembered how Camilla had laughed at it, said it was too sad, girl poetic for someone who wanted a future. Well, here I was, poetic, sad sometimes, but still standing. Mrs. Hartley cleared her throat. "I'm glad you're back." I smiled, but didn't reply. Because the truth was, I wasn't back for closure. I was back for the truth, for the quiet revenge that blooms slowly, under the surface like ivy crawling up stone. As Mrs. Hartley picked out a modest bouquet, I saw through the window a familiar figure crossing the street. Jason, once the boy with paint on his fingers and a sketchbook full of dreams. Now, man in a pressed shirt, holding a phone, walking like he belonged here. He hadn't seen me yet, but he would, soon, and when he did, I hoped he'd remember what he said to me, behind the bleachers, the day Camilla turned the whole school against me. "I don't know you anymore, Lila, and I don't think I want to." Well, he'd get a second chance to decide. The second time the bell above my shop door rang that week, I knew it would be him, Jason. I didn't have to look up to recognize the familiar rhythm of his steps, cautious but not hesitant, like someone expecting to be welcomed. As if years of silence hadn't been a choice, I was trimming eucalyptus stems when he entered. The scent of green citrus filled the air, disguising the sudden sharpness in my chest. "Lila," he said, voice lower now, a little steadier than I remembered. "It's really you." I looked up slowly, setting the shears aside. There he stood, older, broader in the shoulders, wearing a look of subtle regret wrapped in practiced casualness. "Yes," I replied. "I tend to grow back, like stubborn weeds." He smiled, but It faltered. I didn't know you were back. I saw the shop sign, and curiosity got the better of you? I tilted my head. Or guilt. Jason shifted. That's not fair. No, I agreed. It isn't. He looked around, as if the wildflowers and climbing ivy might offer a distraction. This place is beautiful. It looks like you. Thanks. I said flat. You knew what I looked like back then, but you still looked away. He winced. Lila, things were complicated. No, I cut in gently. They were simple. Camilla made up a lie, and you chose not to ask me the truth. That's not complicated. That's cowardice. The words didn't sting me. Not anymore. They'd fermented over time into something sharper, more precise, like a scalpel. Jason swallowed. I was a kid. I made mistakes, and I paid for them. Silence stretched between us like an overgrown vine, tangled, inevitable, organic. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, he said at last. I really am. I nodded slowly. Good, I accept it. But don't confuse forgiveness with forgetting. Jason blinked. So, where do we go from here? I offered a soft, practiced smile, the kind I'd given to broken petals and apologetic customers alike. You go back to your life, Jason, and I go back to mine. You're welcome to buy flowers if you need any, but that's where our roads diverge again. He hesitated. I thought maybe we could know. I cut in gently but firmly. Some stories aren't meant to be rewritten, just remembered. Jason stood there, searching for words. None came. He finally nodded, awkwardly, and turned to leave. As the bell jingled behind him, I exhaled. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't his anymore either, and that was enough. She stepped into my shop like she owned spring. Camilla Evans, still impossibly polished, still with that posture of someone who believed the world tilted slightly in her favor. The name on the online order form hadn't registered at first. Too common, too forgettable. But the moment I looked up and saw her, standing beneath the copper lighting and surrounded by blooms she once mocked me for loving, I knew. My fingers tightened slightly on the bouquet I was wrapping. Lilies, white, peonies, and forget-me-nots. How poetic. Hi there, she said, smiling brightly. You must be the owner? I'm here for a wedding consultation. My assistant booked this, I think. She didn't recognize me. Not even a flicker. I could have laughed if it didn't ache so much. Yes, I said, setting the bouquet down. I'm Lila. Something in my voice made her pause. Her eyes flicked over my face to fast, to shallow. Then she smiled again. Plastic and pristine. I'm getting married next month, she said, extending her hand. Camilla Evans, of course. I shook it firm. Congratulations. Thank you. I've heard amazing things about your arrangements. There's something so ethereal about them. My lips curled. I suppose ghosts do have a way of lingering in my designs. She laughed, oblivious. Exactly. That's what I want. Something timeless, but with a touch of wildness. Organic, free. Wildness. She once told Jason my flowers were unkempt, like Lila's pathetic little soul. I led her through the shop, noting how she admired the very colors she used to scorn. Greens, dusty blues, soft ivory, no longer symbols of poverty, but now apparently elegant minimalism. We sat down at my consultation table, sunlight hitting the vase of forget-me-nots just right. Camilla glanced at them. I want these, she said suddenly. Forget-me-nots. They're so delicate. I smiled slowly. They are. Traditionally, they symbolize memory, especially the kind that refuses to be erased. She blinked, then laughed. Ooh, mysterious. I love that. I thought you might. I took out my notebook and began sketching. Possibilities. All the while, memories unfurled in my chest like pressed flowers rediscovering air. The rumors, the betrayal, the public humiliation she'd orchestrated with such effortless cruelty, and now she wanted my hands, the same hands she tried to crush to craft the symbols of her perfect wedding. Oh, fate had such wicked humor. Will you be handling my order personally? She asked, touching her ring, an obscene thing that screamed wealth but not warmth. Yes, I replied. Every petal, perfect, she said. She would get exactly what she asked for, and buried in every bloom, I would leave behind a memory, one that would bloom at the wrong moment and never ever fade. 3 days later, Camilla returned, this time with her wedding planner, a thin, anxious woman named Melody who seemed allergic to silence. They were 30 minutes late. I didn't mind. It gave me more time to prepare. Sorry, Camilla breezed. removing her sunglasses as if entering a runway instead of a small florist shop. Traffic, of course. Melody trailed behind, arms full of mood boards and Pinterest printouts. We're thinking soft vintage tones. A hint of lavender, maybe, and definitely ranunculus. Camilla loves ranunculus. Do I? Camilla smiled at me, playful. I guess I do now. I smiled back, flipping to a page in my book where I had already sketched out her ideal arrangement. Melody leaned over it, wide-eyed. Oh wow, this is perfect. Camilla tapped a finger on the illustration. What are those tiny ones? These little blue flowers? Forget-me-nots, I said. Her lips parted, then closed. I saw it flicker. Just for a second. Recognition. The way my voice sounded. The way I said forget. But like a cloud crossing the sun, it passed. Melody beamed. I love that name. So poetic. Camilla blinked, then recovered. Yes, quite. I began to walk them through the timeline: bouquet delivery, venue decoration, flower crown trials, everything calm, everything serene. But with every visit, every consultation, I added something she couldn't see: a scent, a memory, a thread of the past. She began to frown more, speak faster, her tone less sure. Her nightmares, I suspected, had begun blooming. I left her a small test bouquet the next week, nothing too flashy. Just some thistle, Queen Anne's lace, and a few sprigs of hemlock for shape. All safe, all decorative. But the name? I labeled it regret. The next morning she called. Lila, can we meet again? Her voice was tight. I've been having these strange dreams. I'm sorry to hear that, I said sweetly. Flowers can stir emotions we didn't know we buried. A pause. Did we? Did we know each other before? She asked. I let silence bloom between us. Then, would you like to schedule for Friday? She hesitated, then hung up. That was when I knew. The soil of her mind was loosening, and seeds of truth were beginning to sprout. Camilla didn't show up on Friday, but I wasn't surprised. The day before, I had delivered a special arrangement to her penthouse: delphiniums for dignity, black dahlias for betrayal, white peonies, soft, innocent, wrapped in eucalyptus that clung to your breath like ghosts from a distant spring. And no note. Just a name handwritten at the bottom of the tag, Lila. An old signature, a name she should have forgotten. That night, she didn't sleep. I knew because she messaged at 2:16 a.m. The flowers. Where did you learn to arrange them like that? Did we go to the same university? Did we meet at Verona Labs? There it was. She remembered, or rather she almost did. I didn't reply. Sometimes silence is more powerful than answers. Saturday morning, I saw her again, but not in the shop. She was across the street, in her car, watching. She didn't come in, just sat there, behind the wheel, eyes hidden behind those giant sunglasses, gripping the steering wheel like it held answers. I stepped outside, holding a small bouquet, a single narcissus, surrounded by monkshood, vanity, and hidden danger. She didn't move. I walked to her car, calm, graceful, let the petals catch the morning sun like a secret being revealed. She rolled down the window slowly. I know who you are, she whispered. No, I said gently. You remember who you were with me. That's different. She flinched. Her forehead cracked. You don't understand, she whispered. What happened at Verona, it wasn't my idea. I never said it was. I tried to stop them. Did you? I asked. Before or after they ruined my life? Silence. She looked away. The wind picked up. A few petals from the bouquet in my hand fluttered down like confessions. I had no choice, Lila, she murmured. You always had a choice, I replied. You just chose the side that won. Her breath caught. I handed her the flowers. She didn't take them. Why now? She asked. Why come back? I smiled. Because something buried doesn't mean it's dead. Sometimes it just needs time to bloom. I turned and walked away, and in her silence, I knew. The memories were no longer dormant. They had broken the soil. That night, Camilla returned to the penthouse with the bouquet still sitting in the passenger seat. She hadn't touched it, but she hadn't thrown it away either. Small victories. Inside, her world felt quieter than usual. The silence wasn't comforting it. Echo.id reminded her of sterile rooms, clinical lights, white coats, and one signature she wished she hadn't put down. Lila's voice haunted her. You always had a choice. She poured herself a glass of red wine. The same kind she used to sip during late-night calls with Dr. Marin, the head of Verona Labs, back when ambition was seductive and ethics were blurry. Back when she thought secrets could stay buried forever, she opened the folder. Yes, she still kept the file. Project Euphoria. Synthetic Emotion Stabilizer Trial Phase III. The final report. Lila's name appeared halfway down, next to the word terminated. Camilla had read it 100 times. But this time, it felt different. Every word bled guilt. Subject displayed signs of emotional dysregulation after 2 weeks. Project halted due to non-compliance. But that was a lie. Lila wasn't unstable. She had uncovered the side effects: neurological decay, hormonal collapse, and tried to warn them. Camilla had stayed silent, because silence pays well, because silence earns promotions, because silence protects careers built on the suffering of others. But now, silence was rotting her from the inside. She grabbed the bouquet and placed it in a crystal vase. The flowers stared back at her like a question. She didn't sleep. Instead, she opened her private vault. Inside she found it, an encrypted drive, labeled Lila Red File. She had kept it all these years, not out of mercy, out of fear, because if this ever got out, everything would crumble. Not just her career but the entire Verona pharmaceutical empire. Camilla stared at it, felt its weight, and for the first time in years, she considered giving it away. To Lila, the one who once believed in her before she betrayed that belief, for a corner office and a nameplate. Meanwhile, across the city, I was preparing for the second seed. This one would take root at Verona's annual gala, a night of gowns, promises, and polished lies. And this time, I wasn't coming as the forgotten researcher. I was coming as the guest no one remembered inviting. The Verona annual gala was a glittering fortress: high ceilings, golden chandeliers, and a guest list full of power and pretense. It was exactly as Lila remembered. Everything polished, sterilized, and masked, just like the company itself, except this time, she wasn't part of the decor, she was the disruption. The valet took her coat without a word. No one recognized her. The long waves of auburn hair, the black velvet dress that clung with quiet elegance, the faint scar above her collarbone, hidden behind pearls. 3 years ago, she'd walked into this building in a lab coat. Now, she walked in as a ghost with a plan. Camilla saw her first, across the ballroom, a single glance like thunder in a clear sky. She froze, wine glass mid-air. It couldn't be, but it was. Lila, alive, dressed like a storm in velvet. Camilla blinked, and, for a second, something sharp twisted in her chest. Guilt, or was it fear? Lila held her gaze, didn't smile, didn't nod, just walked away. To the podium, the CEO was rambling. At Verona, we believe in the power of healing, in progress, in science that saves lives. Lila almost laughed. She stood near the grand piano, her eyes sweeping across the crowd, faces she knew, faces that once applauded a drug they hadn't tested long enough, faces that cut funding for the long-term studies, faces that watched the side effects pile up and called it acceptable deviation. But the real show was just about to begin. From her clutch, she removed a small device, tiny, elegant, designed to hijack the projector system for 90 seconds. Just enough time. She waited for the violin solo to begin, the music Verona always used for their brand video. Then she pressed the button. The ballroom screen flickered, static. Then a grainy image appeared. A girl in a hospital bed, shaking, eyes wide, a whisper on her cracked lips. They told me I'd be okay. They said it was safe. Gasps. People turned. Chairs scraped the floor. Camilla's blood turned cold. She knew this footage. She knew this patient. She knew what was coming. The video. Cut to black in white letters. It read, "The cost of silence is suffering. You will hear us now." Then the lights returned, and Lila was gone. Camilla locked the boardroom door behind her. She pulled the blinds shut, her fingers trembling only slightly. Then she turned to face the head of security. "Find out who leaked that footage. Now," she hissed. "Check every employee badge, every guest, every goddamn valet." Her mind raced. Lila is alive. Lila has the tapes. Lila wants to burn it all down. But how? She was supposed to be dead. They had made sure of that. Meanwhile, in a small rented apartment in a less fashionable part of the city, Lila sat cross-legged on the floor, her laptop glowing in the dim light. Her inbox was full, dozens of anonymous emails, former patients, disgruntled lab techs, a nurse who had kept copies of her notes, just in case. All of them ready to talk now that someone had spoken first. Lila didn't have to knock down the whole tower. She just had to start the avalanche.by midnight. A new account appeared on social media. At Veronak's Besedprol picture, a wilted rose, first post, 3 years ago. They buried me with their lies. I'm back, and I brought the truth with me. Veronophiles hashtag Justice F. Orlan aware member. It went viral within hours. Camilla sat in her office at dawn, watching the notifications pour in. The hashtag was trending. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Do you know anything about this footage? Was Verona involved in off-label trials in South Asia? Why are patients coming forward now? She gritted her teeth. Lila had turned public opinion into a scalpel, not with blood but with whispers. Whispers louder than press releases. At the same time, Lila received a message. You're not safe. They're watching the building. She stared at it. She hadn't contacted A in over a year, not since she'd left the warehouse lab in Lisbon, not since the day they kissed goodbye. Covered in dust and shame, she typed back, let them watch. I've got a whole garden planted. Now. And she smiled calm, certain. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. It was raining. Not hard, but steady, just enough to blur the edges of the city like a watercolor left out too long. Lila didn't like the rain. It reminded her of the night she'd escaped the Verona compound, of slippery corridors, smuggled flash drives, and blood. So much blood on the cuffs of her lab coat. She was on her way to meet someone who claimed to know more than what she had dug up, someone who signed every email. The cafe was tucked between a bookstore and a shuttered pharmacy. It smelled of damp wood, overbrewed coffee, and something else, something chemical, faint but familiar. He was already there, sitting in the farthest booth, hands folded, a black umbrella leaning against the seat. When she walked in, he didn't look up, but he said her name like a prayer. Lila. Her breath caught. That voice, it hadn't changed. Not since Zurich. Not since the trial that never happened. Marcus. She slid into the booth. Marcus had been her mentor, her first real believer, the only person at Verona who had warned her, if your work threatens their profit margins, they will erase you. He hadn't stopped them. He had disappeared, vanished. Just as the scandal began, some said he fled, others whispered darker things. And now, here he was, gone. Paler, but eyes still sharp. Why now? She asked. Because I couldn't live with myself. And because you weren't supposed to survive. He passed her a file, not a USB, not encrypted, just paper. They moved the trials to Northern Africa. They're testing variant 4 now. Children? Lila. Orphans. Unregistered. No press. No oversight. No witnesses. She swallowed hard. She had known it was bad, but this was monstrous. He leaned in, voice lowered. They've also marked you for elimination. Again. She chuckled bitterly. Let them try. You don't understand, he said, almost begging. They have someone inside your network. One of your sources isn't what they seem. Lila's fingers curled tightly around the coffee mug. One of her people, one of the patients, or nurses, or whistleblowers was a plant? Who? She demanded. Marcus shook his head. I don't know, but someone is feeding your plans to Camilla. Lightning split the sky. For a moment, all the noise in the cafe dropped away. You need to go dark again. Hide. But Lila was already standing. No, I've buried myself once. I won't be a ghost again. She picked up the file, eyes burning with quiet rage. This ends now. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the city still glistened, like it was holding its breath. And in the alley behind the cafe, a man with a phone pressed to his ear whispered, She has the documents. Proceed. Lila didn't go home that night. Instead, she took the long way back, cutting through empty tram stations, ducking into side alleys, looping her path again and again. Old habits, born from fear, or maybe from survival. By the time she stepped through the hidden greenhouse entrance, dawn had begun to rise. Her hands trembled, still clutching Marcus's file. Inside, the warmth of the floral nursery greeted her like an old friend, or a fragile lie. Elena was there already, sweeping, humming. Off-key, her apron stained with pollen and lavender. Rough night? Elena asked, not looking up. The worst, Lila murmured. She made tea with shaking hands. Where's Tomas? She asked. Elena paused. Went out early. Said he was checking on the printer at the co-op. Lila nodded slowly. Tomas, the newest recruit. Quiet, kind, always helpful. Too helpful. Her mind flashed back to the timeline Marcus had shown her, leaks that matched up perfectly with the days Tomas handled communications. She hadn't wanted to believe it, but the facts, they didn't lie. She waited until dusk, when Tomas returned, whistling like always. She was in the back room, door open. Lights dimmed. "Hey, you're up early," he joked. "Or, haven't slept?" Lila smiled faintly. "Come in. We need to talk." He stepped in unsuspecting, and she closed the door behind him. "How long?" she asked. He blinked. "Sorry? How long have you been reporting to Camilla?" His expression didn't falter. Not right away, but she saw it, the twitch in the jaw, the flicker in the eyes. "I don't know what you mean. Don't lie, Tomas. Not here. Not in this place. Not after everything we've done." She tossed a small recording device onto the table. "You left it active after your co-op visit." Marcus traced the transmission. Silence. Then, a sigh. 3 months, he admitted. "They told me you were dangerous, that you were compromising global health security. You believed them? At first. But then, I didn't know anymore. And yet you stayed." His voice cracked. "You gave me a purpose, Lila. I started to believe in your work, but I couldn't get out. They threatened my sister." Lila's chest tightened. This wasn't just betrayal. It was another victim caught in the same web she'd escaped. "You're going to help me now," she said softly. He looked up. "What?" "You're going to feed them lies, give them fake reports, false trailheads, bogus locations. You'll be my double agent until we shut them down. And if I refuse, then I expose you. And I let the wolves come." He swallowed hard. "You'd do that?" "I don't want to, but I will. We're past the luxury of softness." He agreed, and as she watched him leave the greenhouse that night, a bitter ache stirred in her chest. She hated what she had become, but she knew it was necessary. For the children in Africa, for the lives still hanging in the balance, for the girl. She used to be the one who believed that science could only ever be pure. But in the shadows beyond the flowers, someone else had been watching, Elena, and this time, her humming had stopped. Elena didn't come in the next morning. No message, no call, just absence, silent and absolute. At first, Lila thought it was nothing. Maybe she was sick, maybe she was tired, maybe she was afraid. But by noon, the fear took root. She rummaged through the drawer Elena used, found a paper-wrapped bundle tucked beneath old invoices. Inside, a flash drive, labeled in sharp ink. "If anything happens to me, give this to Marcus." Lila stared at it. Her hand trembled. The woman who had stood beside her through every seed sown and every secret whispered had kept this hidden. She plugged it in, encrypted, triple layered. But Lila had written the software. She cracked it in minutes. Inside were scanned documents, voice recordings, security access logs, and a confession. "My name is Elena Dubois, and I was once a level 4 researcher at Pharmacon, Geneva. I helped design the viral vector used in the Omega trials." Lila's blood ran cold. She remembered the Omega trials, a failed drug test. Or so they were told, but children died. Seizures, organ failure, silenced settlements, disappearing doctors. The scandal was buried before it ever saw daylight, and Elena had helped build it. The recording continued. "I left after the 3rd trial. I couldn't stay. I thought I'd buried it. But when I found you, Lila, I saw a chance for redemption. You weren't just another rebel. You had evidence, courage, a voice. So I stayed close, helped you, watched over you. But I never told you what I'd done. And now, they know I'm alive. If you're hearing this, I've likely been taken, or worse. Don't waste time mourning me. Use what's inside this drive. Finish what I was too much of a coward to complete." Lila sank into her chair, everything blurred, truths crashing into half-truths, trust unraveling. The woman she thought was her most loyal friend had once built the weapon, then spent years trying to dismantle it by helping Lila build her case. That night, Marcus arrived. He listened in silence. He didn't speak for a long time after. Then finally, "We release it. All of it. This weekend. We go public." "And Elena?" Lila asked. He met her eyes. "If she's alive, they'll move her to the offshore facility. The one in Cape Verde." "You're sure?" "She's the only one who knows how the vector was designed. They won't kill her. Yet. Then we have time." Lila stood, her voice no longer shaking. "We're going to save her. And we're going to burn them down." In the quiet hours that followed, Lila packed a small bag. Inside, a forged ID, chemical vials, a burner phone, and a single silver daisy pressed between glass. Not just for Elena, for all the petals the world had bled and forgo. Nate, Cape Verde. To the outside world, It was a private biological reserve, lush, tranquil, heavily guarded, but to those who knew the truth, it was something far more sinister. Project Eden, Pharmacon's most secret research facility, buried in layers of deception and silence. The very heart of this compound was not a flower bed but a woman, Elena, held like a rare botanical specimen inside a high-tech greenhouse, not to thrive, but to be studied. Controlled. Exactly to 43 am. A sleek black aircraft landed at the edge of the compound. Out stepped Dr. Lucia Carver, a biochemist from the Helsinki Institute, or so the guards believed, but behind the wire-rimmed glasses and hazelnut wig was Lila, every detail of her disguise flawless, every word she spoke perfectly calibrated. She carried a sample of an exotic viral strain, but within the vial was something else, a microchip embedded with the master override codes for Eden's entire security network, and only Lila knew how to deploy it from the inside. Biometric scanners blinked, retinal scans, olfactory recognition, skin conductivity. Door after door opened, until she stood before Lab 7, Elena's final cage. The moment their eyes met, time crumbled. Elena looked thinner. Her hair was cropped, but her eyes still knew. Lila, her voice was barely more than breath. You shouldn't have come. Lila didn't answer. She raised a sleek scanner to Elena's wrist, and in 1 second, the restraints unlocked with a soft click. I came to finish this, she whispered, with you. A siren howled. System breach detected. Red lights flooded the sterile hallways. Steel shutters began to slide shut. They'll kill you, Elena gasped. They'll kill us both, only if we wait, Lila said, lifting her arm, on her wrist. A strange device blinked green. We only need 60 seconds. She pressed it. Eden went dark. Every screen, every lock, every camera, gone. They ran, down corridors lined with moss, through decommissioned labs still haunted by old experiments, through memories neither had dared revisit. Elena panted. Why save me? After everything I did? Because you were the only one who ever admitted the truth. I betrayed you, and I once thought I didn't deserve to live either. But we don't survive to punish. We survive to change what we can. A helicopter waited beyond the tree line. Marcus was at the helm. As it lifted off, Lila uploaded the complete Eden archive, transmitting it globally in just 18 seconds before the servers were destroyed. By morning, the world had changed. Pharmacon exposed. Secret human trials in Africa. Over 200 victims rescued. 2 anonymous whistleblowers. No names. No interviews. No public praise. They simply vanished. 1 year later. In a quiet village in Provence, France, a small flower shop opened. Its name was La Veille, the Awakening. The woman who ran it was kind, soft-spoken. She taught chemistry and plant science to children for free. Her name was Claire. No one knew her past, until one curious little boy asked, Miss Claire, why do sunflowers always face the sun? She smiled. Because, even after darkness, they still believe the light is worth it. The end.